SingleDad was cleaning windows in the rain. The CEO inside couldn't stop watching. The sky had already made up its mind. It wasn't just rain, it was the kind of cold, steady drizzle that soaked you down to the bones. The kind that clung to your skin and whispered that maybe you should have stayed in bed. But Daniel hadn't had that luxury in years. He zipped up his faded navy raincoat, pulled the worn hood tight over his head, and slung his gear across his back. The harness was heavy, the rope stiff, but his hands were practiced, reliable. Like everything else in his life, they worked because they had to. The building stood like a sheet of steel and glass against the gray sky 37 floors of corporate silence. The glass gleamed even through the rain, and Daniel knew he'd cleaned most of those panels himself. He didn't mind heights. They were quiet, predictable, less complicated than people. He checked in at the side entrance, offered a nod to the sleepy security guard, and made his way up the narrow stairwell to the rooftop. No one greeted him. No one ever did. But that was fine. He wasn't here for conversation. He was here for Mia. 8 years old, whip-smart and stubborn enough to make the mornings feel like a battlefield. She hadn't wanted cereal today. She'd wanted toast with exactly that strawberry jam from the blue jar, not the red one. Daniel had searched through every dusty corner of the cupboard only to realize they'd run out. So he'd made her laugh instead, tickled her until her frown melted and she agreed to compromise with a spoonful of peanut butter shaped into a heart. "Come back safe," Shed whispered at the door, "and bring stories." Stories. She didn't know that most days didn't have stories. Just long silences and smudged glass. By 8:00 a.m. he was in position. The sky had shifted from gray to pale silver. The first drop lowered him down past the executive floors with their polished conference tables and untouched espresso machines. And then he saw her. She was standing in one of the top corner offices, a silhouette behind the rain-streaked glass. Not moving, just watching. Daniel blinked, unsure whether she saw him or just the storm outside. Then, as if sensing him, she turned and walked away. He didn't think much of it. To her, he was just a man with a squeegee. But to Mia, he was everything. So Daniel wiped the fog from his visor, pressed his gloved hand to the cold glass, and got to work. The rain didn't bother him. Neither did the height. What mattered was the paycheck. What mattered was making sure Mia never felt the hunger he once knew. Never looked at a broken toy and wondered if she was asking for too much. Rain poured. The city bustled below, unaware of the man suspended 30 floors above cleaning glass in silence. And in one corner office, someone was still watching. The rain blurred the skyline into soft strokes of gray and silver. Amelia Reyes stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, arms crossed, coffee cooling in her hand. She hated mornings like this. Too quiet and too still, like the sky itself was holding its breath. Behind her, the office hummed with silence. Polished oak, leather-bound reports, a desk too large for warmth. Everything was perfect, controlled, just like her reputation. CEO Reyes doesn't linger, they always said. She doesn't chit-chat, doesn't get distracted. They were mostly right, until today. Her eyes drifted downward, following the beads of rain as they slid down the glass. That's when she saw him, the window cleaner, mid-30s, maybe early 40s, damp hoodie, calloused hands. He was suspended on the ropes just outside her glass, methodical and steady, even as the wind pressed against him. He didn't see her, but she couldn't look away. There was something arresting about him. Not just his work, though he moved with the quiet rhythm of someone who knew what mattered. It was the way he carried himself. No slouching, no shortcuts. Each movement was careful, intentional. She caught herself leaning closer. She didn't know his name, didn't know his story, but she'd seen enough eyes to tell when someone had weathered things. That man had lived through storms far worse than this drizzle. Her phone buzzed on the desk. Amelia came, her assistant's voice through the intercom. "Your 900 with the tech team is ready." She didn't respond. She was still watching him now, wiping a streak on the glass right in front of her. For a brief moment, his eyes flicked up. Just for a second. Their gazes didn't meet, but it felt like something moved in her chest anyway. When she finally stepped back from the window, Amelia caught her own reflection. Hair pinned tight, sharp blazer, expression unreadable. She looked every bit the woman they said she was, and yet her heart was offbeat, not because of the view, but because of him. The maintenance room smelled faintly of rust-wet gloves and microwave noodles. It was hardly a break room, more like a storage closet with 2 folding chairs and an old vending machine that always ate your dollar. But to Daniel, it was a place to sit, dry off, and breathe. He peeled off his damp jacket, draping it over a mop handle. Rain still clung to the ends of his sleeves. His sandwich, egg, and cheese on cheap white bread had been wrapped carefully that morning, but it hadn't survived the storm. The corners were soaked. Still, food was food. He took one half, then looked over at Luis, the older janitor, hunched over a thermos. "You eaten?" Daniel asked. Luis waved a hand. "I'm good." Daniel raised a brow. Luis shrugged. "Coffee counts as breakfast and lunch." Daniel didn't hesitate. He tore the sandwich in two, handed one half over. "Egg and rubber cheese. You'll love it." Luis chuckled a dry, raspy sound and took it. For a few minutes, the two men sat in silence. Rain tapped steadily on the window above them. Then Daniel reached for his phone. The cracked screen lit up with a picture of a smiling girl missing a front tooth. He smiled back at it and hit call. "Hi, Peanut." "Dad." Mia's voice squealed through the speaker, bright and full of energy. "Hey, how's school? We had pizza, and I got a star on my spelling test. And guess what? Miss Rena said my drawing looks like a real dog this time." He chuckled, resting his head against the wall. "Told you, practice makes progress." There was a pause on the other end. "Did you eat lunch, Daddy?" He hesitated, looked at the half sandwich in his hand. "Yep, egg sandwich deluxe. Chef's special." "You," she giggled. "Next time I'll make you one. I'd love that." Behind the teasing and laughter, Daniel heard the tiny click of a clock ticking down until she'd run back into a world of crayons and question and classmates. But for these few minutes, her voice filled something in him that the rain couldn't reach. "It'll pick you up at 4, okay? Tell Miss Rena. It'll be outside, okay? Love you, more." He ended the call, stared at the silent screen for a second longer, then slipped the phone back into his pocket. Luis looked over. "She sounds like a firecracker." "She is. And you?" Luis tapped the crust of his half sandwich. "You're the good kind of tired." Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess I am." Outside, the rain slowed. Inside, when Dad finished his soggy sandwich with a full heart. Amelia Reyes had never missed a meeting. Not in the 11 years since she took over Reyes Industries. Not for birthdays, not for broken heels, not for boardroom brawls, not even during the week her father passed. But today she forgot to walk into the room. "Mr. Reyes," came a soft voice from the door. Her assistant Corinne stood hesitantly with a digital tablet clutched to her chest. She looked from Amelia to the window and back again. The quarterly review with Summit Capital was scheduled for 10 minutes ago. Amelia didn't move. She was standing by the glass again, arms folded, watching. Outside, the rain had lightened, but mist still rolled off the streets like breath. There he was again, the same window, cleaner. Harness clipped to the scaffolding, squeegee in hand, moving with the same quiet rhythm as before. There was nothing special about him on paper, but there was something about the way he did it, like each window deserved care, like nothing was too small to do well. His eyes weren't rushed. His presence wasn't loud, but it was unshakably grounded. "Who is he?" Amelia asked, her voice almost absent. Corinne blinked. "Pardon. That man, the window cleaner. I've seen him twice this week. He works like..." She trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. Corinne moved closer, peering down. "Oh, that's Daniel Carter. He's been with our facilities team for 3 years. Comes in early, leaves late." Amelia's brow lifted. "You know his name," Corinne smiled softly. "Has hard not to notice. Quiet, polite, SingleDad. Always shows up, never complains, cleans this entire building himself when others call out. Amelia's eyes followed Daniel's rope as it shifted with the wind. Single dad, she murmured almost to herself. She caught a flash of something else, a small drawing taped just inside his bucket. A child's sketch, slightly smudged but full of color. A smiling sun, a stick figure with a mop of brown hair and a heart above it. In a child's careful handwriting it read, "Go Daddy, you're my hero." Amelia blinked slowly. She remembered investors waiting. She remembered her agenda. But none of it felt urgent right now. "Tell Summit we'll reschedule," she said. Corinne stared. "You sure I'm sure?" Amelia turned from the window and walked back to her desk, but not before pausing one last time. Through the glass, Daniel wiped another pane clean one stroke at a time, like he was making the world a little clearer for someone else. And for the first time in years, Amelia felt herself start to breathe. The wind picked up suddenly that afternoon. What had started as a gentle drizzle turned into a sideways spray smacking against the towering glass panes of Reyes Industries like impatient hands. Daniel tightened his harness as the platform jolted slightly beneath his boots. He'd done this for years in cold and heat, in rain heavier than this. But still his fingers flexed tighter around the metal grip of the scaffold. One more window, then break. Mia would be waiting for his call after school. He leaned to scrub the far edge of the corner panel. A slip of soapy water ran down his glove as his boot shifted half an inch too far. His foot lost contact. The world tilted. His heart lurched into his throat. He caught the railing hard, his left knee banging against the edge of the platform. A grunt escaped him, but he didn't scream. His grip held harness, pulling taut as the safety line did its job. Just another second. Just one. Inside the top floor, Amelia Reyes had been standing by the window again. She saw it happen, saw his boot slip, saw his body jolt against the ropes, saw the sudden terrifying stillness as he hung there clinging to the edge. Before she even realized it, she was running. Down the hall, past the boardroom, ignoring the confused glances of executives and assistants. "Is he all right?" she demanded breathlessly as she reached the lobby, where facility staff had already started moving toward the roof access. Luis met her at the stairwell, eyes wide. It was Daniel. "We think he's okay." He caught himself. "But I want eyes on him now," she said, pushing the stairwell door open herself. Minutes passed like hours. By the time she reached the rooftop, soaked from rain and breast short, Daniel had already climbed back over the ledge with help from a colleague. His knee was scraped, but nothing broken. His hand still trembled, slightly though he tried to hide it. He was laughing quietly, the kind of laugh that says that could have gone badly. Amelia froze at the rooftop's edge. He looked up and saw her. Their eyes met not across glass, but in the open air, raw and real. "You all right?" she asked, voice tight. Daniel stood brushing rain from his jacket. "Happens sometimes." Harness held. "I'm good." She didn't move. "I saw you fall." He nodded. "I saw me fall too." A pause passed between them. Then soft as the rain. "Thank you for caring." Amelia blinked, something catching in her chest. She almost said, "Don't be ridiculous. It's my building." But that wasn't why she ran. So instead she said, "You scared me." He offered her a half smile, the kind that didn't reach all the way, but tried. "Wasn't my best move. Guess even dads have off days." There it was again, that quiet humility, the way he stood in the rain without flinching, without needing to prove anything. And before she left the rooftop, before she returned to her world of polished floors and profit margins, Amelia Reyes turned back and asked, "What's your daughter's name?" Daniel blinked. "Mia." Amelia gave a nod. "Pretty name." Then she walked away, rain soaking the back of her coat, the echo of his near fall still pounding faintly in her ribs. The next morning the rain had cleared. The city glistened as if freshly rinsed steam rising from sidewalks and puddles reflecting blue sky. Daniel was early as always. He stood in the building's lobby waiting for the supply manager to unlock the janitorial closet. He kept his head down, shoulders slightly hunched the way people do when they're used to being invisible. Then her heels clicked. He turned. Amelia Reyes walked across the marble floor with purpose, coffee in one hand, something else in the other, a small white paper bag. Daniel's instinct was to step aside, blend into the wall. But she didn't pass him. She stopped. "Daniel," she said gently. He straightened, surprised. "Ms. Reyes." There was a moment of silence between them. Around them, people rushed by, staff, consultants, execs, but this bubble of stillness held. "I wanted to thank you," Amelia said, her tone deliberate, "for your work, for how you handled yesterday." "That could have been worse." Daniel gave a small nod. "I'm all right. It's part of the job. I know." Still, she held out the paper bag. "A thank you. Just something small." He hesitated. "You don't need to." "I know I don't, but I want to." He looked at the bust like it might bite him. Then slowly he accepted it. Warmth pressed through the thin paper, the unmistakable shape and scent of fresh pastries. "I'm not trying to overstep," Amelia added, softer now. "I've seen how you work, and I've seen a lot of people in this building. Not everyone shows up the way you do." Daniel finally looked at her. Really looked. Her eyes weren't just polished CEO blue. They held something deeper today. Regret maybe, or sincerity, or both. He nodded again slowly. "Thank you for noticing." They stood in that quiet for a moment longer. Then Daniel, adjusting his grip on the bag, added carefully, "I don't take handouts, Mom, not for me, but he'll share this with my daughter." Amelia's mouth twitched into a small smile. "What's her name again?" "Mia. She's 6, loves marshmallows and giraffes, wants to be a superhero." Something softened in Amelia's gaze. "Smart girl." Daniel gave a rare, tired chuckle. "Gets it from her mom." There was a pause. Then Amelia stepped back. "Well, have a good shift." "You too," he replied. She walked away, heels quieter now somehow, and Daniel looked down at the paper bag in his hand. Inside, he'd later find a croissant and 2 marshmallow stuffed cookies. No note, no card, just warmth. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like someone was trying to fix him, just recognize him. And that in its own quiet way meant more than he could say. Daniel always packed his lunch the same way, practical, neat, quiet. A folded sandwich, a thermos of tea, and usually one small surprise tucked in by Mia. Today it was a folded piece of construction paper slipped between a napkin and a plastic spoon. He found it just after setting his things on the small break room table. A moment of calm after finishing the East Tower windows. The light through the high floors always made him feel both small and limitless. He opened the paper, already smiling. It was drawn in thick crayons, a tall building with blue windows, stick figure Daniel on a rope arms wide. A huge yellow sun smiled down. Beside him was a second figure's mauler with wild curls waving from the ground. "Hi Dada," a speech bubble read. In the corner, written in red, were the words, "My dad helps the city sparkle." Mia, age 6, Daniel pressed the paper flat as if the warmth of it could steady his breath. He folded it again, slower this time, and tucked it into his bag like a treasure. But he didn't notice the paper flutter loose when he stepped away. Across the floor, Amelia Reyes passed through the break room with her phone to her ear and a folder in hand. She wasn't going to stop. She never did. Until she saw something on the table, bright yellow, sun-crooked letters, childlike scribbles. For reasons she couldn't explain, she paused mid-sentence. "I'll call you back," she murmured, and hung up. She picked up the drawing carefully. It didn't take long to realize who it was. The figure dangling on the rope had wild black scribbles where the hair should be, in a perfect Daniel frown. The caption made her throat tighten. "My dad helps the city sparkle." She stood there longer than she meant to, and when Daniel returned from rinsing his thermos, he found her holding it. Their eyes met. "I wasn't," she began, flustered. "I just saw it." He didn't seem angry, just embarrassed. "I didn't mean for anyone else to see that," he said, reaching for the paper. She handed it over slowly. "Your daughter made this?" He nodded. "She's proud of you." He looked away, a little laugh under his breath. She thinks I'm cooler than Spider-Man. Well, Amelia smiled gently. You kind of are. Daniel didn't answer, but he slipped the drawing back into his pocket with more care than before. Amelia paused. Then, when I was 6, I used to draw floor plans of buildings, skyscrapers, with my name on them. He looked up surprised. I used to think I'd build something beautiful, she said almost to herself, not just own it. The room fell into quiet. Then Daniel gave a soft smile. Maybe you still can. Daniel didn't expect to be called upstairs. His usual route stopped several floors short of the top executive suite, not because he wasn't allowed, but because he had no reason to go there. The higher you climb, the shinier the glass, the thicker the walls, and the colder the greetings. He was content to stay below, working in the corners where no one looked too closely. Until today. Mr. Rivas, the voice came from behind him. Daniel turned, recognizing the polished assistant from the top floor, crisp blouse, tablet in hand, posture like stone. Ms. Reyes has a request, she said. He blinked. Mom shed like you to personally clean the window in her office. The outside pane. Daniel hesitated. That wasn't a usual request. Upper floor staff didn't typically pay attention to who cleaned what as long as it got done. Still he nodded. He'll gear up. The harness clicked tighter than usual as he prepped on the rooftop rope secured by habit more than thought. The sky was overcast, the wind mild, good conditions. Still his gut was uneasy, and not because of the height. He lowered himself down carefully, floor by floor, until her window came into view. She was sitting at her desk, perfectly straight, papers fanned before her, but she wasn't looking at them. She was waiting. When their eyes met through the glass, she didn't wave, just tilted her head slightly, acknowledging him in her own subtle way. Daniel smiled faintly and went to work. He moved with practiced rhythm, squeegee wipe repeat, but this time the surface he cleared reflected more than just skyline. He caught glimpses of her watching him, of her standing now, arms crossed loosely as if unsure what to say. Then she pushed the window open. Wind swept between them, carrying her voice. You do it differently than the others, she said. He looked over, steady in his harness. Is that a compliment? She smiled, brief and dry. An observation. Daniel cleaned a final streak, then paused. You asked for me specifically, I did. Why, a beat of silence. Because you don't look away, she said. Not when it's raining, not when people pass, not even when someone's watching. He raised an eyebrow. And you've been watching. Amelia didn't answer directly. Instead, she leaned against the frame. How long have you worked here? Almost 6 years, Daniel replied. Long enough to know which floors give me vertigo. Her lips twitched. This one, he shook his head. Only inside. That surprised a laugh out of her, soft, unexpected. I'll finish this panel, he said more quietly. Then I'll move on. Wouldn't want your view getting streaky. She didn't close the window just yet. You know the view from up here is clear, but not always kind. Daniel paused, then met her eyes. Neither is life. Their silence this time wasn't awkward. It was understanding. As he moved sideways to the next window, Amelia remained in the frame for a moment longer. Then she stepped back, letting the pane close behind her. She didn't watch him go, but somehow Daniel knew she was still listening. And for the first time, her office didn't feel quite so high. Daniel wasn't used to getting phone calls from HR. He assumed it was a scheduling mix-up or some kind of equipment audit, not unusual when your job involved dangling from rooftops. So when the receptionist asked him to head upstairs for a brief meeting, he washed the window he was on, packed up early, and tried to shake off the growing unease in his stomach. But when he walked into the small glass-walled office with a view of downtown, he didn't find an auditor. He found a woman in a gray blazer, clipboard in hand, smiling, like she already knew something he didn't. Mr. Daniel Rivas, she asked warmly. Yes, please have a seat. He sat stiff, out of place in his weathered jeans and damp collar. The office smelled like coffee and expensive hand lotion. She flipped a page. You've been with us nearly 6 years, not a single write-up. Excellent safety record. And your last supervisor noted exceptional work ethic respected by peers. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Thank you, Mom, but I thought this was about a window rotation. Her smile widened. It's about something a bit more permanent. We'd like to offer you a new position. He blinked. I'm sorry, maintenance supervisor, she said, passing over a printed summary. We're reorganizing some of our teams and need someone with hands-on experience and good judgment. The role comes with benefits, a steady salary, and set hours, no more climbing unless you want to. Daniel stared at the paper. It was real. Salary, health coverage, paid time off. I don't understand. No one's ever even... I never applied. She tilted her head. Sometimes good work speaks for itself, and sometimes it has a little help getting noticed. Daniel looked up slowly. Ms. Reyes. The woman didn't answer directly, but her smile softened. She's aware of the offer. His hands tightened around the page. Why me? You show up, she said simply. Even when it's pouring, even when no one's watching. We need people like that. Daniel nodded, still processing. She suggested we at least ask, the woman added, almost casually. Said you might not say yes. Daniel let out a breath. She was right about that. And yet here you are. He gave a slow half smile. Take your time, she said gently. But something tells me you're the kind of man who doesn't take opportunities for granted. Daniel left the room holding the offer like it was made of glass. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, it looked like maybe, just maybe, someone saw more in him than just a man with a squeegee and a harness. Maybe someone saw worth. Daniel folded the offer letter neatly and slid it back into the envelope. He had stared at it for days, long enough that the corners were soft from use, and Mia had drawn a tiny smiley face on the back, with her crayon asking, Is this from your boss, lady friend? He didn't know how to answer, so when he finally walked into the HR office and said thank you, but I'll stay where I am, he felt the weight lift and shift, not vanish. Is there a reason, the woman asked, surprised. I'm a window cleaner, he said simply. Been one most of my life. I'm not looking to change that. And he walked out. 2 days later, the rain returned. It was softer this time, not the violent kind, but steady and gray like the sky was whispering. Daniel was finishing a lower floor when the elevator doors opened behind him. He heard heels but didn't turn. Not until he saw her reflection in the window he was wiping. Amelia Reyes, no blazer today, no assistant trailing her, just a black raincoat and her dark hair pulled back loosely, raindrops already dotting her shoulders. You turned it down, she said. He nodded, still holding the squeegee. Didn't know I needed to explain myself. You don't, she said, stepping closer. But I hoped you would anyway. Daniel glanced at her, then looked away. I clean windows, Ms. Reyes, that's all. Is that what you think I noticed? He didn't answer. She stood beside him now, both of them facing the tall pane. Outside, the street blurred in soft rain. Their reflections were faint, hers still, his uncertain. I wasn't trying to fix you, she said. It wasn't charity. Daniel exhaled. Then what was it? She turned to him. It was respect, gratitude. And maybe she hesitated a way to know you better, without needing an excuse. That caught him off guard. He looked at her fully now, rain glistening on her lashes. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't commanding. She was human. The rain doesn't bother you, she said quietly. No, he said. It reminds me I'm still moving. Amelia's lips curved barely. I didn't say yes because I'm scared of change, Daniel admitted. Or maybe I'm scared of taking something that feels like more than I deserve. She stepped a little closer. And what if it's not about deserve? What if it's just about what's next? Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not awkward, just real. I don't know what this is, he said honestly, or what you're trying to offer. Her voice was soft. Maybe just a new view. Daniel looked at the window again, the rain streak gently blurring the world outside but leaving their reflections intact. He didn't reach for her hand. She didn't ask. But when they stood side by side in the quiet facing the storm, it was clear. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about seeing. And for once in his life, Daniel let himself be seen. The rain came down in sheets, drumming against the concrete like an urgent heartbeat. Daniel had just picked Mia up from her after-school program and was unlocking his bike when a familiar black car eased up to the curb. The passenger window rolled down, revealing Amelia Reyes, not the CEO in full armor, but the woman from the lobby, the one who watched storms and spoke gently in the silence. "Daniel," she said, "you're not riding in this." He gave her a polite half-smile, already lifting Mia onto the bike's child seat. "We've ridden through worse." "I know," she said, "but you don't have to." From the back seat, the door opened. "Hi," Mia chirped brightly. "Is that the lady from the elevator?" Amelia leaned toward the window. "I'm Amelia. Would you two like a ride home?" Daniel hesitated. He could feel the weight of everything he'd always tried to do alone, the pride, the discipline, the effort not to owe anyone. Mia, however, had no such baggage. "Can we, Daddy? I want to go in the fancy car," she whispered. He sighed and nodded. "Only if it's not out of your way." "It's not," Amelia said simply. "Where to?" The inside of the car was impossibly warm leather seats, soft lights, and the faint scent of jasmine. Rain streaked the windows like silver threads. Mia leaned her head against the glass, captivated. "I've never been in a car with a light-up ceiling," she whispered. Daniel chuckled softly. "Don't get used to it." Amelia smiled from the front seat but said nothing. Her driver didn't ask questions. They rode in silence for a while, the kind that wasn't awkward, just full of thoughts unspoken. Mia hummed a tune under her breath. Daniel stole glances at Amelia through the rearview mirror, wondering what this was and why it didn't feel like a mistake. "How's work?" she asked quietly. "Wet," he replied, and she laughed. But then he added, "Better than it's been in years, not because of the bomb, because someone saw it." Amelia turned slightly, meeting his eyes. That someone sees more than just the job. Outside, the storm kept raging, but inside the car, everything had stilled. By the time they pulled up to Daniel's small apartment complex, Mia was asleep, bundled in her jacket. He lifted her, gently careful not to wake her. "Thank you," he said, voice low. Amelia stepped out with him, umbrella in hand. "Daniel." He paused at the door. "You don't have to keep doing everything alone," she said. The words hung there, not demanding, not pitiful, just real. He nodded, his voice nearly breaking. "I don't know how not to." She didn't reply, just gently touched his arm and got back into the car. And as she drove away, Daniel stood under the awning watching the taillights disappear into the rain. For the first time, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he could learn. The package arrived on a rainy Tuesday, left neatly on the doorstep like a forgotten secret. Mia had spotted it first, a brown paper-wrapped box with a small ribbon and her name carefully printed on the tag. No return address, no stamp, just her name written in elegant handwriting. Inside a deluxe drawing kit, dozens of colored pencils, pastels, markers, watercolor trays, brushes, and thick sketch pads that made her eyes go wide. "Daddy," she whispered, almost afraid to touch it. "Is it from Santa Denis?" Crouched beside her, studying the set, the paper, the clean corners. It was beautiful, too much. And he knew. He flipped the card over. No signature, but one line was tucked on the corner of the inner lid. "For the girl who sees the world in color, keep drawing." Mia didn't question it. She just threw her arms around his neck. "Can I draw you something right now?" Daniel smiled but felt the weight behind his ribs. "Of course, baby. Just give me a moment first." That evening, he walked to the building again, not with window washing gear, not with caution or nervousness. This time, he carried the box carefully rewrapped in a single handwritten note on plain lined paper. The receptionist at the front desk blinked when he asked for Amelia Reyes. "Shy's in a meeting, it's not urgent," Daniel said. But it is important. He left the box with the note tucked beneath the ribbon. The words were short but sharp, written in his steady all-caps handwriting. Mrs. Reyes were grateful, truly, but were not for sale. Daniel 2 floors up, Amelia read the note between phone calls and quarterly projections. She sat still for a long while, the box unopened beside her again. Her assistant hovered. Should I return it again? No, she murmured, running her finger over his words. No, leave it. Let him choose the next page. And she set the box aside, not as rejection, but as respect. Because even the kindest gestures, if misread, could wound more than they helped. And because the man who cleaned her windows saw more clearly than most people in boardrooms ever could. It had snowed the night before. The city glowed in white silence, but inside the glass tower, warmth hummed in every corridor. Pine garlands twisted up columns. Strings of soft golden lights wrapped around railings. And from the 32nd floor, laughter and music spilled out of the atrium ballroom, where Everline Holdings hosted its annual winter gathering. Daniel stood at the edge of it all, tugging at the collar of a borrowed blazer. This was a mistake, he whispered. Mia beside him in a sparkly navy dress and pink earmuffs tugged his hand. You promised 1 cookie, 1 hour. He sighed, 1 hour. They had arrived late on purpose. Daniel didn't want to draw attention. He just wanted Mia to see what a building looked like when it wasn't stormy or silent, and maybe for once feel like she belonged in a place like this. But he hadn't expected Amelia to find them so quickly. She crossed the room like she owned it, which she did in an emerald dress, her hair up, every movement elegant yet unmistakably focused on them. Daniel she greeted with quiet warmth. And Mia, I'm so glad you came. He nodded awkwardly, didn't want to interrupt. You're not, she said. Then with a glance to Mia, would you help me with something? Mia's eyes lit up. What is it, cookies? I need a taster. And just like that, the girl was off, leaving Daniel alone until he wasn't. Amelia returned a moment later, not with a plate, but with a microphone. The room quieted. She stood in front of the holiday tree, framed by light, her voice calm but clear. I'd like to thank everyone for an incredible year, she began. But more than that, I want to thank the people who keep us standing, often unnoticed, often underappreciated, and without whom this tower doesn't shine. She turned to Daniel. This is Daniel, she said, eyes locked on his. He keeps our windows clear, our view intact. And tonight, I'm proud to say he reminded me what clarity really looks like. A soft ripple of applause. Daniel froze. A VP stepped forward. Someone offered him cider. Someone else clapped his shoulder. Mia beamed from the cookie table, and all he could think was, this isn't my world. But then Amelia was beside him again, quiet and steady. You don't have to stay long, she said, sensing it all. I don't belong here, she smiled. You just stood in the heart of it. Later, as they left with a gift bag and cocoa in hand, Mia leaned against him on the train. I think she likes you, Daddy. Daniel looked out at the snow. I think she sees me. That's enough, but even he didn't quite believe it. Not anymore. The snow had mostly melted by the time Daniel got the call, not from Amelia directly, but from her office. Her assistant spoke warmly, asking if he could come by when convenient. Daniel assumed it was about billing or some post-party cleanup he had missed. But when he arrived, it wasn't the assistant who met him in the lobby. It was Amelia. She stood there in her coat, coffee in hand, smiling, like this wasn't strange, like inviting your window cleaner to a private conference room wasn't unusual at all. Walk with me, she asked. Daniel hesitated but nodded. They ended up in the nearby park, the same one he sometimes took Mia to, the one with the benches that faced the river. The sun was low, casting golden streaks across the ice-lined water. Amelia didn't speak at first. She just breathed it in. Finally, she turned to him. I've been thinking about community, she said. Daniel looked sideways at her. That sounds big, it is. But maybe it doesn't have to be complicated. He waited. There's this unused property, she continued, an old laundromat 3 blocks down from the rec center. It's just sitting there, vandalized, unloved. but it's got good bones. And he asked, I want to turn it into something that matters. A community hub, warm food, homework help, a place where kids can wait after school, somewhere with dignity. Daniel blinked. That sounds great. What does it have to do with me? Amelia turned fully toward him. I want you to help lead it, he stared. Me? Yes, I fix windows. You show up. You remember names. You brought power back to a blackout with snacks and shadow puppets. You are exactly the kind of person I want helping shape this. He swallowed hard. I'm not a leader, she smiled. You already are. You just don't wear a title. They sat in silence a moment. Then he finally spoke, voice low and uncertain. Why me? Amelia reached over, tapping his chest gently just once. Because you show up, even in the rain. The rain had stopped, but the glass still held its shimmer. Inside the nearly finished community center, the lights were dimmed, the tools put away, and the paint just dry enough not to smudge. The silence wasn't empty. It was soft, full, like a breath held between heartbeats. Daniel sat on the wide bench by the front windows, the very same windows he used to clean from a rope and harness, watching life inside from the outside. Now he was here. No squeegee, no barrier, just him and her. Amelia walked in quietly, holding 2 mugs. She didn't say anything as she handed him one and sat beside him. Their shoulders didn't touch, but the space between them felt shared. Steam rose between them, chamomile maybe, or something floral. They both stared out the window, not speaking, not needing to. Outside, the streetlights caught in the puddles. Reflections danced, rippling with the breeze. The city was still moving, taxis passing, people laughing in the distance. But in here, everything slowed. Finally, she spoke. You know, I used to sit in my office and look out these windows all the time. Always felt like the city was moving without me. Fast, important, but distant. Daniel glanced at her, letting the quiet stretch. And then one day she said, smiling slightly, someone was out there in the rain. Not rushing, just steady, focused, Kindian. He chuckled, sipping. You mean soaked and half frozen. She turned toward him. Maybe, but also real. A pause. I think I envied that, she admitted. The way you just showed up, for people, for your daughter, for strangers. Daniel looked down at his hands. It didn't feel brave, it just felt necessary. Exactly, she whispered. For a moment, neither of them looked away. No titles, no expectations. No wealth or weathered gloves between them. Just 2 people who had carried the weight of the world, one in silence, the other behind glass, and now sat side by side, seen. Amelia turned back toward the window. You ever think about how much glass hides, she asked. Daniel nodded. And how much it reveals, she smiled. Maybe that's why I kept watching. And for the first time, Daniel didn't feel self-conscious about being seen. The sun was out this time. No storm clouds, no wind on the ropes, no streaks across the glass. Just warmth, the kind that softened buildings and made people linger a little longer on sidewalks. Inside the new community center, laughter echoed. Not loud, but real. Children were painting. A teenager read poetry out loud in the corner. A mother carried 2 cups of coffee, handing one to a volunteer with tired eyes and a grateful smile. On one wall, framed at the center, was a watercolor of a man in a yellow raincoat holding an umbrella over a child, a girl with mismatched boots and a grin too big for her face. Beneath the painting in small print, storms pass. Love doesn't. Mia L. Daniel stood in front of it, hands in his pockets, shoulders more relaxed than they'd ever been. Next to him, Amelia watched the crowd with the kind of calm that didn't come from power but from purpose. You okay, she asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I finally am. She nudged him gently with her elbow. Took you long enough, he smiled. Says the woman who watched from 20 stories up and didn't say a word for a week. Touch, she laughed. They walked out together, not in a rush, not with an agenda, just two people stepping into the light. The building behind them shimmered with fresh glass, no longer a barrier, but a window to everything they had built together. No longer just the cleaner and the CEO. No longer alone. Just a man and a woman and a view they finally shared.